Yeah, great. Fantastic. Well, can I say, well, firstly, well done to the Christian Union for putting this on. It's no mean feat, trying to feed about 80 people in one go. So well done to them. And a big welcome. And I hope that if you weren't feeling Christmassy, maybe if you've been kind of laid down with exams and everything else, that hopefully tonight has contributed somewhat to the Christmas feeling. I don't know about you, but I have to say, I personally love Christmas. And, well, I love Christmas in December. I have to say, you know, in October, I'm not so keen on it, but this time of year, Christmas is absolutely fantastic. And everything about Christmas, from the friends, to the family, to the fun, to the festivities, it's all brilliant. And the films as well. I'm not quite sure why, by the way, that in Britain, we always sit and watch films at Christmas that we already have on DVD. Like, why do we do that? We'll sit there and watch it on ITV with adverts every 20 minutes. And I just stick the thing on DVD any time of the year, but somehow because it's on TV, we all get excited. Even though it was out 15 years ago at cinema. So there's the films, and then there's Santa Claus. That's very exciting, particularly for my nephews and nieces, of which I have too many already. And too many when it comes to buying presents, anyway. But they're very excited about Santa. Apparently there are different stages in the average male life. Did you know that? So the first stage is when you believe in Santa Claus. The second stage is when you don't believe in Santa Claus. And the third stage is when you are Santa Claus. And the fourth stage is when you look like Santa Claus. But Santa Claus is a particularly important and good part of Christmas. Santa's pretty good, isn't it? So there's Santa, and then there's presents. Which again, my nephews and nieces get very excited about. And I get excited because I get to play with their presents. In fact, I generally buy them presents that I want, like Lego. But presents are very much fun. In fact, I heard the story of a little boy who really wanted a new bike for his birthday. And his birthday was in November. So he prayed and he said, Jesus, please give me a bike for my birthday. His birthday came, birthday went, no bike. So after his birthday, he thought, well, it's not long till Christmas. I'll ask Jesus for a bike for Christmas. He'll bound to answer it the second time around. So he gets down on his knees, starts to pray, and then he thinks, you know what? He didn't give me a bike for my birthday. It's not going to work for Christmas. I'll give up. So he's going around the house in a bit of a sulk. And as he's walking around the house, he sees a statue of the Virgin Mary on the mantelpiece. And an idea comes to him. He takes the statue, he wraps it in one of his t-shirts, he shoves it in the top drawer of in his bedroom, and he gets back on his knees and he says, Jesus, if you want to see your mum again, give me a bike. But presents, whether they're bikes or whatever, they're particularly exciting. But I have to say, I get excited about crackers, okay? Christmas dinner is not a Christmas dinner without a cracker, and tonight, you all get a cracker, okay? I know some people were naughty and they pulled their cracker earlier, but for the rest of us that have been very patient, this is now the opportunity we get to pull our Christmas crackers. If you are not from Britain, you may not quite know much about crackers. Well, this evening is when you get to find out. Just before we pull them, let me give you stats. The first Christmas cracker was pulled in 1856. That's a long time ago. I'm not sure how many people. But tonight we're going to pull a few more. So generally you're meant to cross your arms, that makes it easier, and generally means you don't give anyone an elbow in the face. And when I say go, then I want us to go for it. So on your marks, get set, go! Okay, good. You can tell the jokes later, okay? They really are, worth waiting for them. Okay, so, Christmas crackers. One of the reasons we did that is actually I wanted to say that the Christmas cracker will actually help us think about the message of Christmas. There are three essential items to a Christmas cracker, as you may well know. And the first item I want to think about is the joke. That's probably what you were all talking about earlier on. And this is the joke. This hasn't been vetted because I just pulled this cracker. Why is a horse like a cricket match? Because they get stopped by the rain. Wow. Really bad. Well, maybe your joke is just bad. That has nothing to do with Christmas whatsoever, hasn't it? That's just bizarre. A few years ago, there was a survey done of the worst Christmas cracker jokes, okay? It was done by the University of Sheffield. So now you understand, what university students in Sheffield do all year. Read Christmas cracker jokes. This survey was done to discover what the worst Christmas cracker jokes were. So here are the top 4, okay? Or maybe I should say the bottom 4, because they are the worst. Number 1, what is brown and suspicious and hangs out in a bakery over Christmas? A mince spy. Right. What is the noisiest type of paper? Wrapping paper. Did someone say that? How do snowmen get around at Christmas? On their icicles. And wait for it, this is the worst Christmas cracker joke of all time, according to this survey. What is Good King Wenceslas's favourite type of pizza? One that's deep and crisp and even. Yes, well done. Right indeed. So that's it, the joke. Okay, that's the first part of Christmas cracker. Now what's that got to do with Christmas? Well, it's got this, because actually a lot of people, when they think about Christmas, are tempted to feel that Christmas could just be a bit of a joke. They think, the story of Christmas, Mary and Joseph and the baby Jesus and the little donkey, all sounds like a bit of a joke. It's a nice story, but we just treat it like a joke, along with Santa and Rudolph and the Flying Snowman. That's what a lot of people think. In America, there was a billboard that caused lots of controversy a couple of Christmases ago in Times Square. And this billboard was paid for by the American Atheist Association. And it simply says this: keep the merry, but dump the myth. And what they were saying was the Christmas story is just a myth. It's just a made-up story. You can have a nice time at Christmas, but don't go believing these stories. They're just myths. And maybe that's what you think. Maybe you think, actually, that is the Christmas story. It's a nice story, but it's just another myth. And there have been lots of myths through the history of the world, and there's no reason why we should take this myth as any different. But if you think that, you're in good company, because there was another man who thought that, and his name was C.S. Lewis. You may, of course, have heard of him, author of the Chronicles of Narnia, professor at Oxford University, and for much of his life an atheist. And he used to say, well, the Christian story is a nice story, but it's just a myth. I'm not going to take it seriously. And then one night he was having a conversation with a friend of his, another guy you probably heard of, J.R.R. Tolkien. And one night, C.S. Lewis and Tolkien were going for this walk, and Lewis said to Tolkien, so the problem with the Christian story is just a myth, it's just a made-up story. And then Tolkien turned to Lewis and said, but what if, on one occasion in history, the myth actually happened? What if it really did take place? What Tolkien said was, actually, we like these myths and stories, but there was one myth, if you want to use that word, that really did take place in real space-time history. These other myths, where did they happen? When did they happen? We don't know. They're a little bit like pantomimes, a long, long time ago, far, far away. But the Christian story happened in real space-time history, in a certain place, at a certain time. And Lewis went on to say, actually, as he looked at the basis for the Christian message, he realised that this Christian story was actually what he later termed the true myth, the story that really did take place. And actually, we want to encourage you to say, if you look at the evidence, you can be really persuaded by the evidence that not just the Christmas story, but the whole Christian story is something you can have a real confidence in. Which is why, on the table, there's a copy of a book called John. That's one of the eyewitness accounts of the life of Jesus. And one of the best places to start investigating the story of Jesus is to look at one of those documents. Why not take it home? Why not read it over Christmas? It'll take you maybe a couple of hours. But actually, why not discover the basis to it? And you'll discover that actually, if you read the real story, it's very, very different to the myths and stories that we might surround ourselves with. this really happened because Christmas is no joke. Okay? That's the first thing in a Christmas cracker. The second thing in a Christmas cracker is what you're now wearing on your head. And I have to say, this is a particularly embarrassing part of Christmas for me, because I was blessed with an unusually large cranium birth, and so most Christmas cracker hats do not fit on my head. And I'm left with a Christmas cracker hat that looks rather stupid. Actually, looking at some of yours, they don't fit either, so I'm not the only one. But maybe mine's look pale. There is only one thing more embarrassing than wearing a Christmas cracker hat that doesn't fit on your head. And that is the other thing that you might do at Christmas, which is you forget that it's on your head. Authority to heal. You know, Jesus wasn't like some dodgy faith healers that we might see on some various, TV channels. Jesus didn't just kind of sort people out who had like slightly bad back. Jesus was able to make people who were lame walk, people who were blind see, people who were deaf hear. And this was so astonishing that crowds came to him from all over the region where he lived. Incredible authority. Authority to heal. Authority over nature. There's one story that you'll read about where Jesus is in a boat in a storm. And that storm was so violent that even his followers, who were hardened fishermen, were fearful of their lives. And Jesus stood up and simply spoke to a storm, which is a slightly strange thing to do in a normal situation, and said, literally, shut it. And instantly, it was still. Authority over nature. Incredible. I mean, I can't even still my own bath water when I'm splashing up and down in my bath. Not that that's a good mental image for anyone to have right now, but I can't. And yet Jesus has authority over a storm. He has authority over evil. Jesus encounters people whose lives have been gripped by evil and bent in on themselves, and become utterly self-centered, and he sets them free and transforms them. And he still does it today, by the way. And he also has authority over death itself. See, have you ever thought it strange that we celebrate the birth of Jesus? See, we don't normally celebrate the birthday of dead people, do we? We celebrate the birthday of living people. And it's exactly why Christians celebrate Christmas, because they're convinced that the Jesus that was born is still alive. He's not in a grave somewhere in the Middle East. He came back from the cold. He's conquered death. And as you read through the Christmas story and the Christian story, you realise here is Jesus who really does have authority. And the conclusion of his followers was that he was the king. Here was God breaking in to human history in space and time and making himself known. I wonder how you react to that kind of play. Sometimes we don't always respond positively to the idea of Jesus being king or God breaking into history. Maybe for one of two reasons. It might be that actually when we think of Jesus being king, we can be a little bit like King Herod. You remember the original story? There's King Herod, he's the king, and he doesn't like the fact that Jesus is the king, because it's a threat to his own autonomy and his kingship. Now, of course, none of us are kings, even though we're all wearing paper crowns. None of us are kings, but actually, all of us by nature like the idea of our own freedom and autonomy. And when we think about the idea of a God who might actually exist, and a God who might have come in human history and got involved in this world, that could be a threat to our autonomy, because it kind of changes the way we view the world. Because if there is a God, it changes everything. Particularly if that God actually showed up and made himself known. And some people are honest enough to admit they don't want that to be the case. Listen to what Thomas Nagel said. He's professor of philosophy at New York University, and he's also an atheist. He said, he says, it's not just that I don't believe in God. He says, I don't want God to exist. I don't want the universe to be that way. Or listen to Aldous Huxley of the previous generation, also a well-known atheist. He said, my atheism was an instrument of liberation for me and my friends. Basically, he was saying, actually, my reason for rejecting God wasn't just a purely rational thing. It never is. It's actually driven by my own desire for freedom, my own desire for autonomy. And maybe the idea of a God who really exists is a threat to that. But here's another reason why we might dislike the idea of Jesus being the king. And that is because we have the wrong view of what kingship and power looks like. See, if I say to you, imagine someone who has total and absolute power and authority, who would mentally come to your mind? Like, who is the mental image you have of a person like that? And for many of us, the mental image we have is of a dictator, of a despot. Because they're the people in the world that have absolute power. And as someone said, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And you see these people who have absolute power, and what do? They serve themselves, and they turn their people into slaves. And they use their power for their own ends. And so when we hear about the idea of Jesus being king, there being a God, we can often kind of project our idea of a dictator into God. And we end up thinking of God and Jesus a bit like a Stalin in the sky, or a Hitler in the heavens. Some kind of divine dictator. And that's why it's so important to actually look again at the Christmas story. You see, the angel said to the shepherds, Jesus is going to be a king. And yet, have you ever thought, he's a very different kind of king, isn't he, to any other king? He wasn't a king born in a palace, he was a king born in a stable, placed in a feeding trough. Not born to dignitaries, but born to a teenage mum and a manual labourer. Jesus became a refugee for 2 years. He was visited by the ancient equivalent of bin men, the shepherds in the fields. And the only crown he ever wore in his life was a crown of thorns. Very different kind of king. And actually, if you look at the way Jesus used his power, he never used his power to serve himself, although he could have done on many occasions. But he only ever used his power to serve others, and to help others, and to give to others. You see, when we think of people who have authority, we think of people who use their authority to get, and yet when you look at Jesus, you see here is someone who used their authority to give. And Jesus shows us that the heart of God is not a God who wants to get from us, but a God who wants to give to us. I came home to me a few years ago when I was watching a Christmas advert. Now you're thinking, Christmas adverts? How does this work? Well, I don't know whether you've noticed, but in the last 3 years, Christmas adverts have become big business, haven't they? And this year it's like a fight between Waitrose and gingerbread men. Sainsbury's, their very moving reenactment of the First World War, and of course John Lewis and a penguin you can buy for a lot of money. I have to say, John Lewis, I don't think that's the best one this year, but my favourite Christmas advert is actually John Lewis's Christmas advert from 2011. In fact, I enjoy it so much I thought I would show it to you tonight. There is a reason, I'll tell you in a moment. But let's watch John Lewis's Christmas advert from 2011.
Good times for a change. See the luck I've had could make a good man turn bad. So for once in my life, let me get what I want. Lord knows it would be the first time. Lord knows it would be the first time. So
about God and you think, oh, God just wants to get. Yeah, the message of Christmas is God just wants to give. He's the King that came not to get, but to give. Which kind of takes us to the third part of the cracker, doesn't it? Because what is the third part of the cracker? Well, I have to say, when it comes to a cracker, particularly the quality of crackers we've had on the table is not particularly exciting. My present or gift is a lump of plastic, which I think is meant to be an aeroplane. I'm not sure everyone's got anything better than that, so I'm really sorry. But actually, Christmas cracker gifts, they're a little bit disappointing. They last, they give you about enough satisfaction for about 10 seconds. But actually, what is the gift that God wants to give us? That's the question. What is the gift that God wants to give us? And actually, I'd say it's not just one, but there are so many. What are the gifts that come with the greatest gift of Jesus? Let me give you a few suggestions. Firstly, the gift of forgiveness. See, Jesus didn't come to be a moral teacher or a good example. Jesus, the angel said, came to be a rescuer. He was the one who could rescue us from ourselves, from our own selfishness, from our own greed, from our own mistakes, from our own past. And Jesus said, I've come to set you free, to rescue you from that. Because all of us need forgiveness. All of us have a past. All of us have done things we shouldn't have done. And all of us sometimes haven't done things we should have done. And said things we shouldn't have said, and thought things we shouldn't have thought. And if all of those things were to be displayed on the screen behind me, most of us would feel utterly embarrassed. And Jesus said, I've come to wipe the slate clean, to give you a fresh start. Not just to kind of rub it in and tell you how bad you are, but to rub it out and give you a fresh start. Wouldn't that be a beautiful thing at Christmas, to know that the past is completely forgiven and gone away with? The gift of forgiveness. He also gives us the gift of freedom. And you might be thinking, well, how on earth do I need, or why on earth do I need the gift of freedom from Jesus? Because I've got it already, and that's why I came to university. I've been enjoying my freedom for a few weeks, or maybe now for a year or two. We kind of think, well, we don't need freedom, because I am free. But are we? I thought I was free because I was going and I was ready to go, but actually I wasn't free because I couldn't stop. I wasn't in control. And actually we think we're free because we can do what we want. But are we really free? Are we really in control? Or are we just following the crowd? Or are we just following our mates? Or are we just following our basic desires? Are we really free? I mean, have you ever done something and think, why did I do that? Or you say, I'll never do that again. You do. You see, Jesus said something utterly shocking. He said, actually, all of us by nature are not free, but we're slaves. We're slaves to the pressure of the world around us and slaves to our own basic desires. And he said, the reason why I came is to really set you free. He says, actually, when I come on board in your life, I set you free in such a way that you can live the way that you were really designed to. Not just following the crowd, but with the power to sometimes be different. And to really do what you really want to do, deep down. Jesus can bring freedom. Forgiveness of the past, freedom, friendship. I was chatting to a friend of mine recently. She's been through a really hard time over the last few months. And as we were chatting about different things, we chatted about the Christian faith and talked about that. So, I'm not into Christianity, I don't do church. And I said, what do you really want? She said, what I really want more than anything is someone who will love me and will be there for me, no matter what. And I said, have you ever considered that actually that's exactly what Jesus Christ wants to offer you? He is someone who will love you and be there for you, no matter what. Because Jesus didn't come simply to be a slave master, or even just a king, but he came incredibly to be our friend. And one of the names for Jesus is the word Emmanuel, which means God with us. And it says that actually Jesus is the God who can be with us in our lives, through the highs and the lows, throughout our lives, to the very end of them as well. And can I say just really personally, as a Christian, that's one of the most beautiful things about being a Christian. Knowing God and knowing his friendship and his love. He offers forgiveness and freedom and friendship, and finally, he offers us a future. I don't know whether you saw a clip of the funeral of Philip Hughes last week, the Australian cricketer. I watched the tribute by Michael Clark, incredibly moving scenes, as a nation, as it were, grieved the loss of this 25-year-old talented cricketer in the prime of his life, in a freak accident. And yet a sobering reminder of the reality of death that could come at any time. Now you might be thinking, come on, it's Christmas evening. Christmas isn't a time to think about death, and it shouldn't be, should it? And yet, I guess if you've ever lost someone that you love, Christmas is the time you think about it the most, isn't it? Some of you will feel that. And the great message of Christmas is that Jesus came not just to give us forgiveness for the past, but also to give us a future as well. He's the one who says, actually, I am the answer to death. And I am the one who has conquered it. And I'm the one that can give you a hope, not just for today and tomorrow, but throughout life and into eternity. That is a wonderful message. That is a wonderful hope. So what is the gift that Jesus wants to give you? Jesus wants to give you forgiveness, he wants to give you freedom, he wants to give you friendship, he wants to give you a future, and we could have looked at more, but time is out. Can I just say, will you ever get a gift offered to you at Christmas that is any better than that? A gift that can deal with your past, a gift that will give you ultimate hope. That is the best gift of all. And that is the gift that Jesus Christ offers us. And it's a gift. It's not a reward. Many people think that Jesus Christ rewards the good, a bit like Santa Claus, as we thought at lunchtime. But he doesn't. He gives us a gift that we don't deserve, a gift that we can't earn. And have you ever thought about a gift requires two parts, doesn't it? A gift needs to be offered, and a gift also needs to be received. Not enough just to wrap it up and put a label on it. You need to actually open it up and take it yourself. And God offers us this gift. He says, this is the gift I want to offer you. It's free. You don't deserve it, but against all odds, I'm going to give it to you anyway. He offers it to us when we receive it. At the start of that book called John writes this sentence about Jesus and his gift. He says this. He says he came to his own, but his own didn't receive him. But he, Jesus, yet all who did receive him, he, Jesus, gave the right to become children of God. He said, God offers this gift to everyone. And some people, interestingly, often the most religious people, say, no, I don't want it. That's sad, isn't it? And yet he says to anyone who will receive it, he gives the rights. He gives the right to that forgiveness, that friendship, that freedom, and that future. You just have to receive it. And receiving a gift isn't hard, is it? My nephews and nieces are very good at it. You don't have to do a PhD in gift receiving to qualify. You just need the ability to say thank you. And Jesus says, look, this is the gift I want to give you this Christmas and throughout your lives. Have you ever said thank you? Have you ever received it? Maybe you're saying, well, how would I receive that gift? Well, it is simple. And maybe the words of a Christmas carol would be helpful. I don't know if you ever think about the words of Christmas carols. It's a good thing to do. The words are often, well, maybe you think the tunes are better, but there's some brilliant words. And in one Christmas carol called O Little Town of Bethlehem, the last verse actually contains a prayer. And it's actually a really beautiful prayer. Just look at the words. You might have sung it already this Christmas. O Holy Child of Bethlehem, descend to us, we pray. Cast out our sin and enter in, be born in us today. We hear the Christmas angels, the great glad tidings tell, O come to us, abide with us, our Lord Emmanuel. And those words are a prayer. They're a prayer saying to this Jesus, actually, I want to receive the gifts. I want you to come and do for me what you can do, what you promised to do. And actually, that's a prayer that you can personalise. You can say not just generally that this is for all people, but this is specifically for me. So as I finish, and before we have dessert, I just want to repeat those words. And maybe for some people here, actually, this could be a moment where, maybe for the first time ever, you could just say to Jesus, in other words, thank you. I want to receive that gift. You may, of course, have lots of questions, and that's okay. Christianity welcomes questions. You may, of course, have a few doubts. That's also okay. You don't have anything to worry about. Jesus wants to help you with your doubts. You don't have to worry about all your doubts and sort them all out first. But you may know enough to say, well, if this was true, I would love to know the reality of this myself. And if you do, then why not, just in your hearts, echo these words as I read them again slowly. O Holy Child of Bethlehem, descend to me, I pray. Cast out my sin and enter in. Be born in me today. I've heard the Christmas message, the great glad tidings tell. Oh, come to me, abide with me, my Lord, Emmanuel.